Hey guys, welcome back to the Turbo V6 YouTube channel. So in that last video, we didn't hit the goal that I was really trying to do, which was try and take the stock bottom end record and beat a 10.7. Previously my best was a 10.86, so we're not too far off, but you know, things don't always go the way you want them to. So in this video, we'll go over what I think is the problem and hopefully what we're going to do to solve it. So we'll look at some data to show what I think is happening, and then I'll show the parts that I ordered, and hopefully they'll come in pretty soon and we'll be able to finally test this thing, take it back to the track before hopefully the season is over, and take that stock bottom end record. So stay tuned. So to explain the problem that I was having at the track, it was not happening super consistently. And part of me thought it was a mechanical issue, i.e. I was out of turbo or the engine just didn't want to rev high. Even with the new valve springs, I kind of was thinking that maybe there was still something mechanically wrong with the motor, or I was hitting a limit at a certain RPM. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case now. So what was happening during the runs, and you'll be able to see that in my last episode, was at a certain part of the track, power would just drop off really hard. And after looking at the data log at the track, it looked like the boost was just falling off. And at the time, I didn't really know what was happening. I thought maybe it was a boost cut, and I think one run it was actually a boost cut because I had it only set to like 20 pounds. So I think we maybe tickled the boost cut on that run, but in prior runs, I turned the boost cut way up, and it still did the same thing. So let's jump into the data log, the first data log from the first run, and we'll show you what's happening. So here you can see, I go wide open throttle, and this was a solo run, so I wasn't sure when the tree would drop, so I wound up getting off the throttle right here and then just get back on it, but that doesn't really affect anything. But here you can see I'm launching on like 10 pounds of boost. It hooks, goes up, does the 1-2 shift, the 3-4 shift, no issues. And then you can see either in this white line, which is boost, or this white line, which is, manifold pressure absolute, you can see the boost drops off at like 5,200 RPM. It just starts falling off. And it drops all the way to, 16 pounds. Meanwhile, I was trying to run like 18 or 19 pounds. So I wasn't really sure what was going on. I just kind of thought, oh, well, maybe the motor is kind of hitting a mechanical limit, like it's not breathing as well, so boost is dropping off, or maybe I'm out of turbo. But I figured, okay, well, I'll run it again and I'll just turn the boost up even more to compensate for that drop off. So that's what I did the second run. The second run, I actually turned the launch up as well, so I tried to launch a little harder, which ultimately did not work at all. So it spun pretty hard, but I pedaled it and got back into it, but this time the boost didn't drop off until much later. So here you can see I pushed it up to like 20 pounds, and then towards the end of the run, again, it drops off, a little bit, but not as severe. So I thought I fixed it. So we go to the third run, and in the third run, it really drops off very aggressively towards the end of the track. So you can see boost going from about 20 pounds, and it just falls off to 10 pounds. And I'm still wide open throttle. So this was kind of mind-boggling. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I think I did figure it out. Somehow I noticed at the end of the night, I was not plotting this. In case you notice the ignition volts, they're dropping off significantly. When I go wide open throttle on the two-step, it's holding, high 12s. I launch and it starts to dip. so it goes down to 12 volts, and then right at the 3/4 shift, it dips really hard down to like 10 something volts, comes back up after the shift, and then it starts to drop off really hard once I'm above 5300 RPM, and basically the voltage is super low for the rest of the run. I mean, you're talking like, I don't know how this motor is still alive. That being said, I really didn't understand why this was happening. I thought maybe the alternator, is the alternator bad? But yet I just bought it a few months prior. I bought basically a perfectly remanufactured alternator from AutoZone. How could it be failing? But right when I let off the throttle, it goes back to charging just fine. Now I'm up just under 13 volts. So what is going on? Well, I for one never really expected to have this issue, but I think ultimately I'm revving too high for the alternator. I'm sure it's not very common with the small block Chevy, stock small block Chevy, or a lot of people with the 4.3, but I know in the LS V8 world, people have issues with overspinning the alternator and it stops charging. So I believe at 18,000 RPM at the alternator, because there's basically a gear ratio change between the crankshaft pulley and the alternator pulley, you're spinning the alternator much faster than the engine RPM. So for quick math, I'm pretty sure the stock crank damper pulley is around 7 3/4 of an inch. I just measured it with the tape measure. So 7.75 divided by the alternator pulley diameter, which is roughly 2 3/8, so 2.375. So I get a ratio of 3.26. So 18,000 RPM divided by 3.26 is 5,500 RPM. So when I start revving higher than 5,500 RPM, the alternator is beyond its capability of spinning. So I think it's just shutting off. And potentially because I was overspinning it, that may have degraded it. So it may have started to fail at a lower RPM than that, because mine is basically shutting off around 52 to 5,300 RPM in most of the runs. In some of the runs, it's gone higher, but in most of the runs, in most of the data logs from the last video, and even from drag week, I was having the same issue, but I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't charting the battery voltage. I just had that as a data logging that parameter, but I wasn't charting it. Therefore, it was hard to notice that the battery voltage was dropping off, because there was really no symptoms that I noticed. So yeah, I think even going back to the first drag race, back when after I put this alternator on, it immediately started failing. So the first pass or second pass, it didn't really do it, but then subsequent passes right after that, it started immediately to drop the voltage. And now that I've turned the boost up even higher in this prior test session, I'm hitting those higher RPMs earlier in the run and for a longer period of time. I'm noticing it because the voltage is dropping so low that I feel that the boost controller is shutting off. It's having some kind of internal reset, and therefore the solenoid is shutting off and boost is hard dropping off, and basically that's how I noticed this. So definitely something for other people to look out for LS or any GM alternator that that is stock. You really got to watch out for how fast you're spinning the alternator. There are pretty simple ways to fix it. So let's get into that. So this is the alternator. I actually picked up a brand new one from AutoZone. So I picked up a Duralast Gold alternator to replace the standard Duralast one that I put in 3 months ago, just in case that old one was internally failing. I just wanted to have a new one, and I've ordered a larger pulley to slow the shaft speed down of the alternator. I'm actually going to be putting a 3-inch pulley on the alternator. Pretty cheap. Picked it up from Hoosier Pulleys. Super nice. We'll see that when it comes in. Aluminum. It's going to replace this one, and hopefully it's not too hard to get off and put the new one on. I'm probably going to have to get a longer belt, but that's not that big of a deal. So yeah, once I get that pulley in, we'll be able to swap it out. All right, it's been a few days. I pulled the alternator back off because we'll be swapping the pulley. And I got this custom 3-inch pulley from Hoosier Pulleys. I'll put the website and a link in the description. They got it to me super fast, and I thought it was a really reasonable price, and they put whatever you want on it. So I did the Turbo V6 Sonoma because, you know, why not? I got the impact socket that I think is going to work for this. Hopefully I'll be able to get it off without too much trouble and be able to swap it out. So yeah, let's get to it and see how hard it is to swap out. That was actually pretty easy. There we go. Actually super easy. Well, now I can bolt the alternator back on. So the only kind of annoying part is it's too late to run to the parts store and get a new belt, but I think I'm gonna need a longer belt because of the larger diameter pulley. So let's slap this thing back in. Okay, well, I just took a spare piece of wire, wrapped it around all of the pulleys, and marked it. So I'm going to pull that out. I have the tensioner at the loosest position. So I'm hoping I can just take off maybe like a ½ inch. This is what I read online from that length. And hopefully that's a common part, and I'll be able to pick that up at the parts store. We'll get that out and measure it. Hey, what's up guys? Back at it again. And I pretty much got everything good to go. I got the belt from the parts store. Wasn't that hard. Seems like it's common, or at least semi-common belt size. I actually put it on. I was planning on going to a track rental tomorrow, but it looks like it's going to be a rain out, and it's going to get pushed to next week. So hopefully that one doesn't rain out.